The ayes have it. Honourable members, the question now is that vote, foreign affairs and trade stand part of the schedules.
Mr. Chairman.
Have we got it worked out, guys? I call the Honourable Phil Goff.
Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Foreign Affairs has signalled that he's going. He's going to New York to be ambassador there. And believe me, it can't come too soon. Mr. Chairman, this Minister was so keen to appear before the Estimates Committee that he turned up at 1 o'clock on the Thursday afternoon, 1 hour before the House sat, on the very last day of estimates. He couldn't have left it any longer. We'd given him 6 weeks in which to appear, and he chose the very last minute. And no wonder, Mr. Chairman. This Minister has to go because he's made an absolute botch of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and its reorganisation. And John Hayes is wanting to nod there, but he can't quite bring himself to it because the boss might be watching. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs that I remember was committed, it was competent, it was absolutely efficient, it was professional. And he took that ministry and he turned it into a disillusioned and dispirited organisation in the space of 3 years. You know, the ministry does a survey of how engaged its employees are. And what did that survey found? It found that 14%, 1 in 9, were positive about their job at Foreign Affairs. 14%. 57% were ambivalent. They didn't know whether they still wanted to work in that organisation, and 28% were negative. This was a professional foreign service, one of the best ministries in this country and one of the best small ministries in the world, and that is Mr. McCulley's legacy. And why, Mr. Chairman? Why? All to save, how much? $12 million. Destroyed a professional organisation to save $12 million. It's absolutely unprecedented. 49 heads of mission, we have about 53 of them, 49 heads of mission, the most able and experienced civil servants in the Foreign Service that we've got, wrote a letter saying that the steps that Mr. McCulley had initiated would, quote, damage for years our ability, New Zealand's ability, to pursue our economic and trade interests. That was the conclusion of our top civil servants in Foreign Affairs, Mr. Speaker. And what did he pay to do this reorganisation? Well, he spent $10 million on consultants, $10 million on consultants and seconded staff, $6 million in redundancy, all to produce a crock that he had to disavow halfway through the process, Mr. Chairman. He blames John Allen. Who's John Allen? John Allen is the Chief Executive Officer of Foreign Affairs. He's a civil servant now. He can't answer back, and it's lacking in courage for any minister to treat their Chief Executive Office like that. But what did we find in the examination in the Select Committee? We found that long before Murray McCulley owned up to knowing about it, he knew that 300 people were on the line to lose their jobs. He knew that 600 staff would have to reapply. He knew that the local staff in our agencies around the world were going to be sacked. He knew that the allowances paid to civil servants who took their family overseas to a posting were going to be savaged. And he knew that there was a plan to close down multiple European posts. That was the plan. Murray McCulley knew about it from the start. He blamed John Allen, but the truth of the matter is this. That plan would have gone ahead, but for a full-scale rebellion on the part of our most professional civil servants and the anger, dismay of the stakeholders that knew that New Zealand's interests in trade and security internationally depended on Foreign Affairs, who said this has got to stop, and they pulled the reins in on Murray McCulley. Mr. Speaker, I want to say one other thing that came out of the Select Committee, and it was the cult of secrecy. This Minister, Murray McCulley, was a minister who censored 2/3 of the briefing to him as the incoming Minister of Foreign Affairs, and at the Select Committee couldn't justify cutting that information out. This is the only minister in the House that has withheld and continues to withhold the Treasury briefing on the portfolio responsibility. It's a cult of secrecy, Mr Chairman.
I call the honourable member John Hayes.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. One of